and welcome to the Scottsdale Development Review Board public meeting. The purpose of the Development Review Board is to maintain the quality of development in Scottsdale by reviewing all the design aspects of a proposed development and the relationship of its design components to the surrounding environment and community. The board also reviews all preliminary plats for subdivisions to assure conformance to policies and ordinance requirements. The agenda consists of the roll call, public comment on non-agendized items, administrative report, minutes, approval of the prior meeting, and action items. A roll call vote will be taken after each item's motion. The liaison will call each board member's name to indicate their desired vote for the item. After the vote has been counted, the liaison may read out the final vote. Citizens wishing to speak during public comment time or to speak specifically on any agenda item may fill out a blue request to speak card at the staff table before the agenda item is to be discussed. Citizens interested in submitting a written comment on any item may submit a yellow written comments card in person to the staff table prior to the beginning of public testimony. When called, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and begin speaking. Groups wishing to speak should elect a spokesperson to represent the views of the group. To facilitate the meeting, your comment will be limited to 3 minutes to individual speakers, with an additional minute for each additional individual present at the meeting who has contributed their time to a representative, up to a total of 10 minutes. I remind our audience that the board's review relates to design matters and does not include consideration of existing zoning district designations, zoning entitlements, or the allowed uses within the zoning districts. I read that slowly on purpose. The board's motion may be to approve with modified stipulations, deny the request, or to continue the case. Thank you for your interest and time. We will begin the meeting with a roll call.
Councilwoman Caputi.
Here.
Vice Chair Brand.
Here.
Commissioner Young.
Here.
Board Member Pieser.
Here.
Board Member Fakih.
Here.
Board Member Mason.
Here.
Board Member Robinson.
Here.
All present. Thank you.
Thank you. Next comes our public comment for non-agendized items, but we don't have any, so we will move on to an administrative report from Brad Carr.
Thank you, Councilwoman Caputi, and welcome everybody back from the holidays. Great to see you all. We did have a regularly scheduled meeting for next week, but since we don't have any items pending anything today, we will likely cancel that meeting shortly after this meeting. So our next regularly scheduled meeting will be the first Thursday in February, which I think is the 6th. So hopefully we'll see everybody there at that time. I want to thank Councilwoman Caputi, Commissioner Young for your time on the board, for your rotations. We're going to miss you. Hopefully we see you around soon. And that's about all I have for today. So thank you again.
Thank you, Brad. Next, we will approve the minutes of December 12th, 2024 Development Review Board meeting. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes.
Second. Roll call vote.
Councilwoman Caputi.
Yes.
Vice Chair Brand.
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Board Member Pieser.
Yes.
Board Member Fakih.
Yes.
Board Member Mason.
Yes.
Board Member Robinson.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to our consent agenda. We have 2 items on consent. Unless anyone has questions or concerns on either of those items, we'll usually take a vote for both together. So we have consent agenda items number 3 and 4. Do I have a motion for approval?
I'll move to approve the 2024 Development Review Board annual report in case 2-PP-2024 per the staff recommended stipulations after finding that development applications meet the applicable Development Review Board criteria.
Second.
Perfect. Roll call.
Councilwoman Caputi.
Yes.
Vice Chair Brand.
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Board Member Pieser.
Yes.
Board Member Fakih.
Yes.
Board Member Mason.
Yes.
Board Member Robinson.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 2 items on our regular agenda for today. The first item is number 5, Case is 16 DR 2024 Papago Village, and I'm sure we're going to hear a presentation on this.
Thank you, Councilwoman Caputi, Commissioner and board members. I'm Casey Steinke with the City of Scottsdale Planning Department, presenting case 16 DR 2024 Papago Village. All right. You can see the site location here, generally west of 64th Street on the north side of Oak. This is by the city border, so that is the city of Phoenix directly to the south of this. And then closer up, you can see the site is kind of sandwiched between some R4 townhome residential to the west and the Elks Lodge to the east. The site is primarily zoned SR, service residential. Now, service residential is intended to be a transitional zone, so it can afford for both commercial and residential development on it. In this particular case, the applicants are seeking approval for a site and landscape review along with building elevations for a 94-unit residential community, along with a couple of accessory buildings that go along with that on a roughly 9.6-acre site, zoned again primarily SR, service residential, though there is a small pocket at the northwest corner of R110 single-family residential. Here's some of the pertinent site and project data in apparently very small font. And the current site use is offices which are vacant. The redevelopment proposal would call for just over 100,000 square feet of residential building area. That includes about 6,000 square feet for the clubhouse and an additional 5,000 square feet of part of the existing office, which is going to remain but be repurposed for the community use. SR does also cap the height at 18 feet, and that is the height being proposed for this project. And in terms of several other typical development standards like parking and open space, the applicants do exceed the minimum ordinance requirements by providing 168 total spaces for parking and 4.5 acres of open space. Looking at the allowable density in SR, SR does allow up to 12 dwelling units per acre. In this particular case, that could afford up to 121 units. The applicants are seeking 9.3 dwelling units per acre or 94 total units. And here's how that kind of looks laid out on the site. You kind of have a circular drive with two entrances coming off of Oak. There's actually a third entrance in between those, which is more kind of intended to access that office building I talked about, which is going to be repurposed. But the units, 1 and 2 bedroom units, are situated around and in between that circular drive. There is an access aisle on the left side heading north, and on the north side is the amenity area. You can see turf, dog park, pool, clubhouse, those sorts of things up there. You'll also notice that for buffering purposes, a 6-foot block wall is proposed effectively around the entire perimeter, west, east, and north. And on top of that, there is also going to be a 15-foot landscape easement, which effectively acts as a setback, but also affords for some mature tree plantings for more buffering and visual interest. And here's a look at the open space plan. A lot of the open space is emphasized, and there is a lot of excess open space. A lot of it's emphasized as frontage open space, so effectively the first 50 feet of depth off of Oak Street is going to be undeveloped. It's going to remain as open space. You can see the other blue areas on this image are common open space, so near the south center area where that repurposed building would be, and then, of course, at the top by the amenity area. And you can also see in green the private outdoor living space, which goes with each individual unit. Looking at the landscape plan, it emphasizes a variety of desert-appropriate trees, and they're, along with other plantings, of course. And the trees are kind of emphasized, I would say, in two kind of strategic areas. One is in that landscape easement, so all around the perimeter on the north, east, and west side. But then also in that southern frontage open space, there's a strong density of tree plantings, and that frontage open space also acts as an on-site basin for water retention. And here we can see some of the elevations for the dwelling units. On the left half, you have the one-bedroom duplexes on the right, the two-bedroom units. We're looking at primarily appropriate materials and colors, stucco and Sonoran desert tones. The height is about between 15 and 16 feet for these units, and the applicant narrative does discuss getting some of this inspiration for the mid-century modern kind of, or the mid-century approach from the area in general and specific to this particular site's history. And then similarly, here's a look at the clubhouse, a little taller, but harmonious with the dwelling unit design and pretty much a similar concept. And with that, we'll conclude the staff presentation. We also have the applicants from Modus Design Team with their own presentation if needed.
Sure, unless we have any questions for staff at this point, let's hear from the applicant.
Good afternoon. My name is Andy Barron, here on behalf of Modus Development and the development team that's kind of seated in the back row here. If there's questions throughout this that I can't answer, I definitely have some backup. My address is 310 East Rio Salado Parkway here in Tempe, Arizona. So I wanted to thank staff for their presentation. They did a fantastic job giving us sort of the highlights of what we're working on and what we've been working on very closely with staff for quite some time now. So I'll run through a presentation. Some of it is duplicative. Where it is, I'll probably skip through it a little bit quicker so we don't have to spend too much time recapping. But I'll kind of start with, let's see if these arrows work. No? Oh, you have to use the mouse. Okay. Scroll? Oh, got it. Okay. Sorry, folks. Just a quick recap. Obviously, the existing land use was office. The existing zoning in place is SR, service residential. I think it's really important. Obviously, the zoning does allow us to develop residential, and that is what we're proposing. Important to sort of look back a little bit to where it was started. This project previously came through with K-Hub Indian Homes. Additionally, a proposal for residential. Big variations here, though, and I think it's important to point out that the majority of the product that was proposed was two-story. There was a lot of opposition in the neighborhood because of that. And then they are also proposing removing the Nempton building that we'll talk a little bit about here in a few minutes. So I wanted to spend just a minute about the previous case, making sure that we make some distinct differences of what we're proposing in our project. Wanted to spend a minute just talking about Modus in general. Ed and his company have a very significant commitment to providing energy efficient design and homes that are affordable to the community. And the net zero focus is something that Ed is very passionate about, and it's something that he plans on bringing into this community as well. So, and I think something else that's really critical is that through this process, the engagement with the neighbors has been quite extensive. There were 4 separate meetings held to make sure that it was clear what was being proposed and that the fact that we were actually keeping the existing structure in place. So that outreach extended to 167 different property owners. And I'm going to hold something up here. And this is printed double-sided, but we have a series of letters from the neighborhood in support of this project. While there are some in opposition, the majority of folks are in support. And as I said, 4 separate open houses were held. Some of the things that we heard, oftentimes traffic is a big concern of folks. I think that we were able to dispel any concerns, explaining how traffic movement works, the fact that our AM, PM counts are actually lower than what's the current use is today. Residential obviously creates less traffic movement than office uses. The building heights, as you just heard, single story on all the units with the exception of the clubhouse, which I'll touch on in a few minutes here. The density, we're 94 units. We could do 121. We're way below that. Parking, we have ample parking on site. In fact, we exceed the parking requirements under code. And then the overall feedback, I think, was people were very excited about seeing this influenced mid-century but a very modern interpretation of historical architecture. So the site today, as it sits, is the blood bank. The Nempton building, I don't know, oh, you can use the mouse, is sort of on this southwest corner here. The 3 driveways, well, there's actually 4 driveways today that exist that access a parking lot, one on the far east and one on the far west next to the existing neighborhoods. We did spend a lot of time with staff working on driveways, assuring that we would be avoiding conflicts of turning movements and access to the existing services to the south. So the proposed site plan, as staff had indicated, is comprised of a series of 1-bedroom duplex units, which are attached, and then separate 2-bedroom units that are detached. 800 square footish on the 1-bedrooms, 1,200 square footish on the 2s. The clubhouse site, approximately 5,000 square feet, and then 6,000 square feet. And the existing Nemtin building is at about 4,700 square feet. So the organization of the site, definitely residential adjacency, residential character on the edges. We did plan and work with staff very closely on ensuring that we could provide a 15-foot landscape setback, that the developer will put landscape in those rear yards through tree canopies so we could create a nice visual buffer. The site itself organized intentionally for us to create a strong axial connection to the clubhouse at the end of the roadway. So we have this terminus that leads us into this facility. So we're sort of framing that arrival. As you come into the entry, there's a compression point. We have vertical landscape, a lot of pattern planting, intentionally looking long view toward the clubhouse, which then actually is set up for a very long-range view of Camelback Mountain. So very intentional design here. We worked very closely with staff to provide access to the office building. This would be the only public access point. This building is intended to be a co-working facility, the ability for residents that may have businesses to have other folks come in, meet with them, be able to work through projects, very much like what we're doing right now. They could do that in this building. If they wanted to have family meetings or other things, they could do that. We're also proposing a series of enhancements around the perimeter of the building, which include exterior outdoor spaces, seating areas, additional landscape shade. And the client, Ed, is putting a lot of money interior of the building, removing a lot of things that hid the character of it. There were drop ceilings put in, drywall things put in, and those are all being removed to kind of bring it back to its previous stature. So beyond that, the organization of the site really employs the amenity connections on the north end, internal connections throughout that provide access to the amenities, parking spaces, and the units themselves. So we have a few pictures in here, aerial views and some renderings of the proposed architecture. You could see very low flat roofs, deep overhangs, again, really trying to get into a little bit of that mid-century modern feel. Very mild articulation on the buildings, but recessed windows and doors. Corridors between the buildings themselves would be obviously shaded with landscape, low-level lighting, quality pathways and materials. And you could see the articulation again with the stucco treatments. The colors are off a little bit. They are more earth tone here. But again, you can kind of see the commitment to quality and the simplicity in the architecture. Long-range view of the clubhouse on the terminus, and ever so slightly, because the building is somewhat blocking it, you can see the Camelback view in the long distance. The open space plan staff touched on. I'll only say we exceed every category. The existing building, the 4,700 square foot Nemtin building, you can see some of the existing pictures here. The exterior we will retain, the interior we're going to renovate. Here's a kind of a blow-up plan view of what's being proposed. You can see that this really is the back of the building, but the front's on the front side, which is kind of weird. But we've done our best interpretation of trying to connect things so that there is quality, usable space on the exterior of the building. The clubhouse, here's a quick just snapshot of that, again, 6,000 square feet. The interior, there's a fitness space here, a couple of living rooms living spaces downstairs and a kitchenette, and upstairs there's some office space as well as an additional living room space and a deck for that long-range view. The building, because this is a two-story mass, I just wanted to clarify that the overall building height does meet the requirements in code as the building height is measured from the curb on Oak Street. So we are under the 18-foot max requirement. And here's just a back view of that. And then the project entry, as we said, I just wanted to blow that up a little bit to make sure it was clear that it is gated We are putting a lot of thought and energy into creating some formality and structure. We want to create a nice compression arrival for folks, make that real resort feel and textural component. And everything that we've done is intentionally been to complement the architecture and that horizontal linearity that that form takes on. So with that, I promised I'd go quick. I'll pause, see if there's any questions.
Questions from any board members? Board Member Faki, I know you're there, so just speak up too if you have anything.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay. The project doesn't have garages, correct? Everyone's just parking outside open?
You know, I thank you for clarifying. I probably should have told you that. The units themselves do not have garages, but there are garages available on the property. And those are these darker blocks that are here. The other lighter shaded areas are all shaded parking spaces.
Okay, and then another thing that someone brought up to me that I've been thinking about too is in terms of street access to the different units. Is there direct access to each unit, or are you sort of walking through past one to get to another?
Sure, and I can answer that, Council Member. As you park in one of these spaces, I know it may be difficult to see with my mouse, but there are sidewalks that lead to each front door from an adjacent sidewalk on the parking areas. So you can walk from a parking space directly through here to a front door, for instance, on these two beds, back to this back corridor where there is another north to south connection that then leads access to directly to the front doors. And that's consistent throughout.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
If we don't have any further,
Yeah, I
Commissioner Young,
have
yes.
just one question. There was kind of an oblique 3D perspective view that you had of a streetscape. Could you go back to that?
This one?
Yeah, so where are the garages?
In this view, they're not shown. I'd have to show you on the plan view. The perspective was just taken from a different location.
Where on the plan is that perspective shown?
It's more generic, Commissioner.
So the streetscape won't look like that?
There will be a garage unit, for instance, potentially in a location like right here where it would be elevated. And that would be an enclosed garage area.
So as you're driving down one of these internal streets, you're just going to see garage doors?
There are some garage doors, yes.
How many garages are there?
There's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 buildings of garages, and they're on this interior edge here, and there's one in this location here.
Okay, and so all the rest of the parking is covered parking?
Correct. There are some areas that are not covered, and you can see those just where there's gaps, and there are some symbols showing some vehicle parking areas. Some of that is uncovered parking.
Okay.
But the majority of the parking is covered.
It would have been helpful to have more of an accurate representation of what that looks like.
In the rendering?
Yeah.
Point taken.
Okay, well, we have some comments from the folks in the audience, and so why don't we take some public comment, and then we'll
All right.
come back for more conversation.
All right, no problem, thank you.
Great. So we have several requests to speak cards. Why don't we hear from, and I just, before folks come up to speak, I just also want to remind everyone that we are discussing the board's, I'm going to read this again, actually, just real quick. The board's review relates to design matters and does not include consideration of existing zoning district designations, zoning entitlements, or the allowed uses within the zoning district. So our purview on Development Review Board is mostly design. So we have John Deal. If you want to approach the podium, name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm old, I'm hard of hearing, and I'm ornery. First of all, my credentials. Camelback, 1898, my grandfather at 56 in Indian School. I live in the Sherwood.
Mr. Deal, could you speak into the microphone, please? It'll be easier to hear.
Ma'am, I don't hear you, I'm sorry.
Just have you speak into the mic here.
Oh,
Pull that over.
okay,
I'm having that same problem.
I'll get it right eventually. It takes a while. Okay. I live in the Sherwood area on Cambridge. I live on 60th Street, which is a minor artery, gets a lot of traffic. About half of them exceed the 25-mile-an-hour limit. Anyway, I've visited several of the modest developments. They're very good. I would give them a B+, or maybe even A-. Okay, but this is not the right project for this place. It's much, much too dense. I've seen density before, and this is nothing, but it's a new standard for Arizona. I went through the Google Earth and Google Maps and Zillow. It is the most dense project in all of Scottsdale. There are far too many units in that area. To give you an idea, the 9 acres are basically the same as that of the Sherwood Heights area north of Wilshire, and so that has 94 units. The density is 7 times the density of the Sherwood area. So that's like having a home with 3 people and putting 21 people in them. What else? Of those 94 houses, about 56 have no direct access to the road. You have to go through wallways. They're stacked 2 and 3 deep. I don't know. Traffic. I heard that the traffic would be even less than it was with the blood systems or Valiant or whatever it is. That's not true. I went back 6 years on Google Earth and I never found more than 40 vehicles in that property at any time. There's no way in the world. I mean, the traffic is going to be less, and we don't need more traffic on Oak. Oak is precarious, to say the least. I'm not used to speaking English here, so anyway. Let me see, I got 29 seconds left. How should I use it? As to upholding the character of the area, quote unquote, I did not receive a notification. My neighbors didn't receive any notification. And there was no strong commitment to the neighborhood. Last but not least, I think the rules of the development stipulate a 10-day notice for the hearing. This is the 9th day. You're in violation of your own rules. It was posted on 12/31. Go look at the sign. It's still out there. It was blown over yesterday. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Deal. Our next speaker is Ed Hadley.
Thank you. Mine will be short and sweet. Raising a family here in Scottsdale, excited about the opportunity for more housing. We've got plenty of empty office all over the city. It's finally time to start building some more affordable living spaces for my young children and hopefully their children, because candidly, I'm an employer and obviously have family here, and most of my employees have to commute from Peoria and west to work in Scottsdale. And when we talk about, these the densities and what's happening in Scottsdale, super excited because now I can actually hire people and they can work and live where in our offices. So highly support this. Modus does a great job. Glad they're taking on this property, and hopefully you guys are in favor. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Next, we have Thomas O'Leary.
Madam Councilwoman, Mr. Commissioner, members of the board, city staff, and the Modus team, it's a pleasure to be here. You'll excuse the digression, but the last time I appeared before the city in this chamber was 1981 or 1980. Herb Drinkwater was the mayor, and I persuaded Mr. Drinkwater to help me persuade Salt River Project to stick in what we now see as the yellow steps in the canals. And that was a wonderful experience. I have great admiration for the city of Scottsdale. But I'm going to urge the rejection of this Oak Street application, since it would be difficult to envision a project more out of character with the existing neighborhood, the traffic flow that exists there, and perhaps most consequentially important, something that would carry more adverse consequences to the folks who'd be expected to live in this development. I'll explain. I've been a 46-year resident of the neighborhood. And I see Scottsdale, I see a couple things that are critical. One, Scottsdale's direct knowledge of the fact that this is a low traffic street. Two, Scottsdale has direct knowledge that this low traffic street has limitations and perils that are associated with it. The hills, the low speed limit, I think 25 or 30 miles an hour, they change it every once in a while as soon as they get new information. But that's a problem, and I'll explain this. I also see as a critical fact the present situation of Oak Street having two dead ends at the canal, at the Cross Street Canal and also the canal on 48th Street that's at Phoenix. But that limits the street. It's a minor artery. There is nothing, and I defy the board to check this out, there is nothing in the way of development along that limited Oak Street corridor that would rival the density of this particular project. That's very important. Nothing exists.
Mr. O'Leary, you're out of time. Do you think you could wrap up your comments?
I'm sorry.
You're out of the 3-minute time. Could you?
How much time do I have?
You had 3 minutes.
Okay. In any event, I think the people that are most important here are the future prospective residents. They're expected to be, planned to be, lower-income people. And if they're lower-income people, they need access to basic transportation. It's a hike to McDowell to Thomas. That's where the transportation lines. I don't think planning has planned in any change in terms of the transportation lines. Those people need access to transportation. I will leave an envelope, my comments, to city staff over there, and I thank you again for the time.
Thank you. We have one final speaker. I'm struggling with the last name, and the writing is a little tough, but I'll do my best. Paul Villaritas. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Councilwoman and members. I'm not quite as long-term resident in the area as Tom and John. I've only spent 10 years in Papago Buttes, which is behind this to the north. Like they said, it's completely out of character for the neighborhood, the level of density. If you look at that site plan, you've got no direct access, and you're 3 deep walking into that. If you've been on Oak, you know what Tom was saying as far as how much traffic Oak can support. I encourage you, before you approve this, that you spend a little bit of time in Papago Buttes, Sherwood Heights, Heritage East, which is directly next door, and see the flavor of that neighborhood. Scottsdale is losing what Scottsdale was. And you know, if you look at the development in the south end of Scottsdale, the traffic flow, the density, the noise, we're losing what made us special. And this development is key to this. They could take this and pare it down to a reasonable number, get more money for their units, and leave the neighborhood intact. Instead, what they're doing is jamming as much as they can in to make as much profit as they can, and they don't really care about the existing neighborhood. That's where you come in. You have the say as to, what Scottsdale is now and what it is in the future. And if it's, LA where everybody's crammed in, where you park your car and have to walk 3 deep to get to your apartment, that's not what we are. That's not the quality that we've had. And I implore you to go out and spend some time there and really get a feel for the neighborhood and the long-term residents that are there that love and care and cherish that place and don't look at it as a bank. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to address any of the comments? And again, I just want to remind the audience that this location is zoned for the density. It's not a zoning case today. We're going to be discussing design matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember, Commissioner, members of the board, and the residents for your comments. We appreciate them. Councilmember, as you stated, the zoning's in place. The city agrees that this use, as service residential, could support up to 12 units to the acre. We are below that. We understand the context and we understand the comments, but those are matters of opinion. The fact of the matter is the zoning's in place. Relative to traffic, I think we touched on that a moment ago. We did do a traffic analysis. We are able to show that the counts are less. We believe the site access is adequate. The city traffic engineers agree with us. We worked hand in glove with them on that. As far as it's related to notifications, as we stated, we sent out within a 750-foot radius. I believe the number was 167 notifications and 4 separate neighborhood workshops, open houses. So folks could come and learn about the project. So we did our part in sharing information with the public.
We do have all those comments in the case packet too, so
yeah,
I
absolutely.
hear
absolutely. And then just to kind of answer one quick question, there was a comment about these being lower income units. That is not the case. This is targeted for business professionals, think doctors and lawyers, people who are going to be here, after a hard day's work, being able to come to this amenity flush project and be able to sit on that deck and look at Camelback Mountain over with a glass of wine. I mean, we've intentionally designed this more as a resort feel. This is an asset to the neighborhood, not a liability. So I want to make sure that we're clear about that. With that, I am happy to answer any other questions that you all have. Otherwise, I'll take a seat. Respectfully request your approval.
Any other questions from board members? Commissioner Young?
Thank you. Could we go back to some of the elevations of the units and maybe in the clubhouse?
Would you prefer the clubhouse?
This is fine. So explain to me what we've got going on with the materials on these buildings. It looks like most everything is stucco. Is that correct?
It's correct. Depending on the level of complexity and the questions, we do have our architect here that could answer these questions.
Okay, because I'm just trying to see the parallels between, Heritage East to the west of this, Highview to the east, Sherwood Heights, which I'm very familiar with. I live in the neighborhood also.
Sure.
Which are all slump block, CMU, painted CMU. They've just got materiality of those is very different than this, and I would like, it'd be nice to see a little bit more than just, and I hate to say stucco boxes, but this is a very geometric style of architecture. To possibly see some other introduction of materials in there to be more compatible with the area. Walk me through and maybe your architect can speak to some of that.
I think it would be best for him, since it's his project, for him to present that. So,
Okay,
David, do you want to come up and discuss the project?
Great.
My name's David Dick. I'm an architect. I actually live in Scottsdale on Cherry Lynn in South Scottsdale. There was an inspection of the neighborhoods around the Papago, and what we did is we saw the block. And so what you'll see is an incorporation of the block in the site walls and the areas that are up front, as far as that are containing the backyards. So there is a deliberate attempt to add the block into the designs. And then if you look back at some of the drawings that were put up, the block walls are on there to pick up the block that's in the neighborhood. No, they're not on these. There was one that we sent earlier. It's so that the site walls you see will all be slump block walls. Okay?
Okay, so the frontage walls that are along Oak are going to be, you say they're slump block?
They're slump block, and then you'll see the site walls that separate the yard spaces. Those will be block also.
The yard spaces in between each unit?
Yeah, and so you'll see, and because of the orientation of the units, you'll start to see the block wall facing the streets, so that you'll pick up the block wall and the texture of the neighborhood off the block wall.
So can we take a look at the west elevation of the clubhouse? Because that's going to be the most visible from the neighbors to Heritage East. They have their rear yards that face that. Is that the bottom elevation?
Yes.
That's the west elevation?
Yeah, that would be the west elevation. No, this is the east. Let me flip one more.
Sorry, my eyes.
Clubhouse side, it would be the top elevation is the elevation that would face the subdivision to the west.
The top one, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Could you flip to the next slide? What was the one that I was seeing? There was just
Four?
Yeah, the bottom one.
Correct.
So the bottom one is the
Elevation on the east side
east side, okay.
that faces into the subdivision, into our subdivision.
All right. Well, just the north, the west, the south all look to have a fair amount of detail to them, and then the east elevation looks to be kind of devoid of, and it's hard to tell the different planes that are going on there. It just looks a little flat to me.
I think the elevation is difficult, but part of that elevation is the mailboxes, and so what it is we're giving a covered mailbox area that is going to give it the definition. If you saw the three-dimensional renderings, you can see it is relatively geometric, and the elevations, I think, read flat the way that they're presented for DR.
Do we have a 3D elevation?
Are there 3D elevations?
Yeah, there were some of the.
Can staff load the applicant's presentation?
Right.
It's gone. I can't find it. Okay. That's what I thought. To basically the piece you're looking at, you can see that there is a lot of articulation, and the piece that's on the right of the entry is where the mailbox is and that kind of gathering area for the neighborhood. And then you can see that the second level actually cantilevers past the lower level, so there is articulation front to back all the way around. And so it is a very broken geometry, and specifically to match the units, the houses that are to the west. It is not flat, it is very broken.
Okay, thank you.
Comments, questions from our board?
Am I the only one that has comments? Oh.
Vice Chair Brand?
Clarification on the paint color, the white color that's being used as a material. Is that within our suggested LRV range? That's a question for staff. Okay. It's coming across on the rendering. Is it? That could also be a question for staff, for Casey as well.
Actually,
Sorry, I can't do that.
again, the color that is presented, the light color, was actually worked with the staff. And I don't have the color in front of me specifically, but it was a color that had been improved before several times with other buildings, and so it fell into the desert range, and the LRV that it was something you guys were comfortable with. So, yes.
Casey, can you elaborate on that? We don't have access to other cases or.
Let me see.
We'll see if we can get, Vice Chair, we'll see if we can get my, all right, so we're looking at, for the two stuccos, we're looking at LRVs of 21 and 63. We
Okay.
generally shoot for 70.
Oh, so it's under 70 for
It is.
the white. In the renderings, the white looks like it's a really bleached out white color. So it's actually under 70, which is well within range. I appreciate that.
Correct.
I was just going to make comments on the overall site planning and design. I do want to say thank you for the team for preserving what I would consider a mid-century, one of the few remaining kind of mid-century monuments in the area. I mean, my background personally in the area is that I have several families and friends that live, I think it's on Winthrop. This is just northwest of this area, so I'm in this area a lot, and I play volleyball at the Elks Club, so I'm very familiar with the site here. Again, a 25-year resident out here in Scottsdale, and I'm raising a family as well, so I'm particularly someone who's dialed into the residential industry in particular. And I actually really like to see developments like this because I do feel that from how you're approaching the development strategy, we tend to see front door parking lot style parking arrangements with every single unit having a direct driveway and parking lot. And that orientation tends to not create great walkable communities. It is very convenient for someone taking their groceries home, but it also creates a lot more parking field, a lot more asphalt. And I do feel like the way that this project has been approached, it is something that creates a much more walkable community forward. With that community forward meaning it's encouraging residences to bypass each other and to engage with each other through shared walkable pathways. I do like that the orientation of the clubhouse, the organization of the site, I think has been done really well. And again, the rehabilitation and preservation of a mid-century piece, I think is really appreciated personally myself, and I think on behalf of the city as well. I do think that design-wise, the units, I appreciate keeping the low-rise under the 18 feet and significantly under the 18 feet of the height limit for these units. Typically when we see projects of this typology, they're pressing up against the heights and it's multi-story. You're asking for multi-story up against single-story properties, which is not the case here. So I appreciate that the building height is being kept at a real minimal height here. So personally, as I've reviewed the details of the case, I do like what's being proposed here, and I think it's, while it is out of character maybe for the neighborhood that is directly adjacent to here, and I do hear all of the conversation that's happening, it's also a different approach to a mid-range density that we don't see typically here in Scottsdale. So it is something different, but I don't think that is necessarily a bad thing because I do think that the layout and the way that this has been approached is a slightly different way of approaching housing, and I hope that it bears success and it does create that type of housing that I think that incoming and first house families are desperately seeking here in Scottsdale. So appreciate that application as well as the plan that's being put forward.
Vice Chair Brand, thank you for your comments. We appreciate it.
I'm just going to quickly say that I tend to agree with those comments. What we hear a lot up here on the dais is that folks are angry about lots of tall, dense, boring apartment buildings, and everyone tells us that they want different types of housing, particularly single family. Of course, it's difficult to do on a smaller site. I appreciate that you're, again, keeping it low, allowing a different type of housing for our community, which we keep hearing. Agree. I mean, maybe
I would say that we hear the term thrown around a lot, missing middle, and this is the actual definition of missing middle housing. Mm-hmm. This is what it looks like.
This is a failed commercial site, and I know that the state legislature right now is really leaning heavily on failed commercial that has an opportunity to provide mixed use or residential instead. So that's another pressure that's weighing on us as well. I mean, something's going to get built here. And I believe you've done an interesting job of using up this particular space. I think Board Member Young had some interesting, I mean, that weighs on me too. At least in the renderings, it looks a little boring, but it's always so hard to tell in a 2D picture what the end product is going to look like. This board is incredibly quiet. I wish we could get more participation.
I would encourage the applicant to show parking shade structures and garages in your renderings in the future for submittal.
Point
Mr. Barron.
noted and communicated to my client, yes. Councilmember Caputi, thank you for your comments. We appreciate the feedback. And renderings will in the future include all structures.
Perfect. Do any other board members have any comments? Board Member Faki, I miss hearing from you. Yes, Board Member Mason, sorry.
Since we're talking about the parking structures, the shaded covered parking areas, I noticed that your buildings had solar panels on top. Will there be any solar panels on the parking areas?
Solar panels on parking areas is a thumbs up, so yes.
Okay, very good. I really did like this project. I thought it was well done, and I second all the comments that have been made before. I think this is be an excellent project, an excellent addition to Scottsdale's housing issues. Thank you.
Board Member Mason, thank you.
If there are no further comments, does any board member want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll move to approve case 16-DR-2024 per the staff recommended stipulations after finding that the development application meets the Development Review Board criteria.
Second.
Councilwoman Caputi,
Yes.
Vice Chair Brand,
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Before I vote, I guess I would just like to say I do wish that the project had a little bit more materiality, compatibility with the adjacent neighborhoods. I think that by just having that facade along Oak Street, it's a nice gesture, but I think it's very different on the inside. I think because of, you know, the missing rendering that didn't have the garages, the parking canopies. I've been in communities like this in different parts of the valley, and it has a very different look to it. You know, without having some of these 3D perspectives of the rest of the community, it's a little hard for me to kind of grasp exactly what this is going to end up being at the end of the day. And I know that you had said that in the future you'll include those things, but this is the time that we needed it. Because after today, you guys are going to permit drawings and then probably to construction shortly after that. So, you know, with that, I'm a no vote on this one.
I apologize. Can you please confirm, are you voting no?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Pieser,
Yes.
Board Member Faki, Board Member Mason,
Yes.
Board Member Robinson.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going
Yeah,
to...
just real quickly, I'll clarify, that's a 5-1 vote. Yes, thank you.
Correct.
I apologize. 5-1. Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item number 6, 26 DR 2024, Honor Health Shea Parking Garage.
Good afternoon, Councilwoman Caputi, Commissioner Young, and Development Review Board members. I'm Brian Clough with the city's current planning department. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the proposal for the Honor Health Shea Parking Garage, case 26 DR 2024. The specific request this afternoon is for approval of the site plan, landscape plan, and building elevations for this 4-story parking garage with 472 parking spaces. The site location is within the Honor Health Shea campus at Shea and 90th Street. as you can see highlighted in yellow here. A closer look at the site identifies the proposed parking garage location with the yellow star towards the southwest corner of the existing development. The existing site is zoned special campus and also within the planned community district. Across the street to the west is a shopping center, and then to the east across the greenbelt is additional Shea campus area and further commercial to the east. To the south is the city's Mustang Library, and to the north is some residential and other commercial properties. The proposed site plan here shows the location of the new parking structure within the development. You can see the existing building kind of wrapping around to the north and the east. Site circulation is going to be remaining pretty close to as it exists today. The access off of 90th Street is the existing driveway, and the driveway, although being slightly reconfigured along the west and south, is existing. Access to the structure is provided on the west side of the building and south. As I mentioned, it's 4 stories and is going to include approximately 472 spaces. I believe the current surface lot has about 190 spaces, so it'll be a gain of about 282 parking spaces. To the north and east in between the building, you can see some enhanced hardscape and landscaping. There will also be some new landscaping provided along 90th Street. It does also include a second level bridge that accesses the hospital building directly from the parking structure. Here's a look at the landscape plan to give you an idea a little bit of the hardscape and the planting that'll go in. Along 90th Street is Palo Verdes and a lot of densely planted shrubs along there. There's landscaping provided adjacent to the building to provide a base on the backside of that driveway. These are the proposed building elevations. The 4-story structure is approximately 52 feet to the highest point. Here on the top is the north elevation, the bottom is the west. So this is the most prominent elevations that you'd be seeing from 90th Street. There is it's a cast concrete construction, and then there's perforated metal detailing that'll be across the facades. Then here the east elevation that's facing towards the hospital building is on the top, and then the south elevation on the bottom. Here's identifying some of that detailing that's on the building. Those patterns there are the perforated metal panels with a bronze finish that'll be across the facade, and then the proposed paint colors that would be on the rest of the building. Here's some 3D renderings of what the new parking structure would look like. Then to close the presentation, again, the request this evening is for approval of the site plan, landscape plan, and building elevations for the new structure. That concludes staff's presentation. Happy to answer any questions if you have for staff, and the applicant team is also here with a presentation.
Great. Unless there are any questions, let's hear from the applicant. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Fatima Garcia. I'm part of LGC, and we're here with the design build team. Here about the existing conditions. Right now, like Brian mentioned, is an existing surface parking lot with 190 spaces. It's often completely full, and for this reason, Honor Health provides valet services for patients, which is very critical for labor and delivery, which is in the building. With our new parking structure, we're going to provide 472 spaces, and like he mentioned, it's going to be directly connected on the second floor with a bridge, which is directly connected to labor and delivery. This view is showing an aerial view of the parking garage and the hospital campus, which shows the bridge that is connecting to the hospital. And it's located in the corner where here in this view it's been part of the campus development plan at this location. Also, with the landscape design and the hardscape design and the site plan, it complies with the design guidelines from this campus development plan. This is the view in the corner from 90th Street. This is the northwest view. This is one of the views that is from the most public portion of it. We're using aluminum metal panels with custom pattern. And we're using those in specific locations in areas that are going to be in view from the street. And we work with the staff from City of Scottsdale to make sure that the location of these panels are going to be located in the most impactful places. So they're going to be in areas where they can be seen through 90th Street. So another thing that we're doing in these corners is providing treatment in the stairwell, which is located in the corner here, that it has a lot of impact from the street side. We're also providing different colors of paint that do go along with the existing colors of the hospital, but also with a desert color palette. And this is the material board that shows those paint colors that we're talking about that provide the play along with the hospital colors, but also with the desert palette, and it's showing the custom metal panels. This is the other view that working with City of Scottsdale staff, we thought it was very impactful from 90th Street. This is the southwest corner. Another thing that we did here was the use of mural in the corner to play with the different heights. The use of this corner were transitions from the 4 stories to the ramp. And again, the use of the metal panels in here, making sure that covers the area where the public is going to be driving through the street and see where the garage is. This is the view that shows the bridge that is connecting the garage to labor and delivery, like we're saying, providing the service to one of the departments that is very popular and one of the most critical users of this parking garage. This is a view of the plaza. This plaza is between the garage and the hospital. This also functions as a fire lane access. But one thing that is important here for us was more function, and this is to provide an area of respite and stress relief for patients and users. So for us was more the use of landscape and hardscape to provide this area of relief for patients. And we just want to close again with this view from Northwest with the use of metal and paint colors. And using this slide also to respond, I think we received a couple of questions from a board member. And one of them is we designed the structure to be able to hold a 5th floor. And the question is if we are seeking approval for a 5th level. And at this point, we're going for permit for construction for 4 floors based on the budget of the construction that we have. But Honor Health wants to keep that door open for a future phase of the 5 floors. And the 5 floors can be for a parking level or a B occupancy, just for adaptive reviews in that case. So I guess the approval will be for just like master planning a 5th floor level. And then the second question was if for the elevation on the east side and part of the south side, if we can be including more of these metal panels. So when we work with the city during the pre-application process, we have a lot of conversations about how to make those elevations that were more visible from 90th Street, that were more visible to the public. We work with them to make sure that that's where we provide the most use of those metal panels based on the budget that we have for this project. So with the city staff, we were able to reallocate and use the most area of the metal panels that we have for the project based on our budget. And with this, we made a decision that the most impact was going to have in the places that we're showing today. So the areas where you don't see a lot of metal panels, which is kind of in the plaza area towards the hospital and kind of in the southeast area, those are more on the internal side of the hospital where there's not a lot of public view and there's more landscape treatment in that area. So that is it. Any more questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Board Member Mason?
I was the one that raised the question about the 5th floor and about the panels. So my question is, if you're thinking of going to the 5th floor, you're just stressing the building for the 5th floor. You don't know what it's going to be when you come back and ask for it. Is that correct?
Correct. So it depends on how the needs for the hospital grows at that point, if it's going to be for more parking, or if the parking needs decrease at that point, if it's going to be for something else. So it's more like master planning for the future. So right now, the design for the structure is designed to bear the load, but it's not known at this point what that's going to be.
Okay. Then looking at the design, if you were to add a 5th floor, and it's ill-defined now how it's going to be, there's going to be certainly issues blending your existing facade with the new facade. And I don't know if that's been thought of or not.
It's been thought to a certain point. If it's a parking floor, another level of parking, the system of the metal panels are designed in such a way that can be extended for another floor, so it's just adding an extension. And we also start in the maximum height that is allowed in this parking lot, and we don't exceed it. And then it's designed for a B occupancy. We also did some studies of elevations and how those work. So we were able to see if it's like a glass facade or something like that, how we can articulate those to make it work. So there were some design of like the column grid and things like that to make it work in the future. So we kept the doors open for owner help on whatever the needs are going to be when the design decision comes.
Okay. And I understand what you mean by budget limitations for putting metal panels on the other surfaces. And I see what you mean there. One question did arise, and it's probably not in the purview of what we're saying here. It's just a question. In terms of stressing floors of the parking lot, are they stressed for existing cars, or are they stressed for the extra weight of EVs?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
EVs, as you know, weigh considerably more than gasoline cars. And with projected, which may or may not happen, growth of EVs, is the parking garage set to accommodate a lot of EVs?
We got a variance for that just because of the nature of this parking garage being for patients for labor and delivery. And the hospital wants to avoid having people park there for 3 hours charging the car when there's an emergency. So we work with City of Scottsdale having a variance, and since this is a big hospital campus, if there's another ways to provide that kind of requirement.
That was my question about charging. The question was about the building design to support the weight of the cars.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Yes, it is designed to support the weight of the cars, and and what I was saying for the 5th floor is designed to support a 5th floor with the weight of the cars, but also a B occupancy in case that's what they want to do in the future.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I like it.
I have a question. Can you elaborate? What is the construction type of the garage? Is this a cast-in-place type 1 garage?
It's a PT slab and what was that?
Post-tension. So it's a post-tension slab. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is not a precast double T garage. Okay.
No.
I was wondering that because I'm looking at the underside of the ceiling finish. So there actually are going to be finished ceilings on this garage, or is it exposed concrete with mounted lights, or?
It's exposed concrete, and we're trying to put all the conduits and everything inside that slab as possible.
So you're burying the conduits in the slab. Okay.
Yeah.
And so the spandrels that are on the edge of the garage are turned up concrete up to the 42 or 46 inch, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's great. That answers actually quite a few questions because some of them were about the delineation of the bottom level of the garage with a separate paint color. So you're going to have essentially a control joint or something like that you're not just having 2 lines of paint right next to each other. There's a gap or a gasket of some sort.
Yeah.
Between the column and the beam that's going across there.
Yeah.
Okay. The other question I have is about, I appreciate what you were talking about with so this is being sized and structured for an adaptive reuse in the future for occupiable hospital space. Is that correct? Okay. The other question I have is regarding the ground level floor plan. By the way, I love the layout and the design of the garage. I have 2 additional questions. On the layout of the ground level floor plan, it appears that you have a significant number of ADA stalls that have pathways that are traveling behind the vehicles.
Let me see if I can go back.
I don't know if you have that. I know staff had the plan up.
I think you can see it on the side plan. Let me see if it's visible or not. No, this is an old one. Yeah, I think it was on the staff.
It was in the staff presentation. Just something to note, I don't know if you have a variance on that or not, but from a federal,
What was the layout of the ADA?
the travel pathway for accessibility is traveling behind a significant amount of parking stalls, which you're not permitted to do. So
Okay, we can take a look at that. I
Take a
think we
look at that.
verified the distances, but we can double check.
yeah, you can't travel behind parked cars. So you're
Okay.
going to have to exit all of those directly onto where you have landscape areas, and it's currently not designated that way right now in your site plan. So note
Okay.
to staff. Also, we don't want to end up in a situation where you don't have enough accessible parking stalls because of the access configuration. So
Okay.
in a motion for approval, I'll ask anyone who's making a motion to include coordination with staff for the ADA for the accessible parking stall alignments. I don't have any other, the only other question I had is, it seems like the tree canopies and the tree selections that are on the entry drive that leads to the drop-off are represented on a pretty low height. What's the 5 or 10-year height of the trees that are planted? And it looks like in kind of a off-red color right now.
Yeah, and I don't remember by memory. I think we have
They're
the
represented.
landscape plans, but we
They're
work with
represented pretty modestly on the rendering, which is surprising. Usually you see over-representation of tree height,
Yeah.
and these look under. I would defer the tree species and height to our resident expert, Commissioner Young, on the panel.
But I do want to say that the campus development plan have very specific guidelines about landscape on the different areas of the hospital campus, so we were strictly following those for these areas as well.
Okay, so there's a palette that's been determined by the hospital. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we have that plan, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's a pretty extensive guideline that was done probably 12, 15 years ago
Yeah.
for both campuses, so, yeah.
And I'll end my comments with being thankful that this project is going to be built, because it is terrible to park here.
Yeah.
Having visited and my own children in the labor department, is absolutely a nightmare to figure out parking in this area.
Could not agree more. I had
And-
three children in this particular hospital.
Thinking that
It's
you
a
may be
nightmare.
towed, like you're like, I have no idea if I can park here or not. Anyway, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments or questions from board members? I mean, I wish all parking could be underground, of course, but given that it can't, and this is an above-ground parking garage, I think you've done an exceptional job making it visually pleasing. And again, I can't think of another location in our city that's more desperately in need of better parking. I've never been able to park at the Honor House Shea, so without driving around several times. I'm perfectly in support as well. And with that, unless anyone else wants to make the motion?
Chair?
I'll make a motion, or do you want to make a motion, Joe?
Oh, I was going to make a motion.
Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, move to approve case 26DR 2024 per the staff recommended stipulations after finding that the development application meets the Development Review Board criteria, with the added stipulation that the applicant work with staff on the ADA stall routing, that meets all applicable codes, state and national.
I'll second.
Councilwoman Caputi,
Yes.
Vice Chair Brand,
Yes.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Board Member Pieser,
Yes.
Board Member Faki, Board Member Mason,
Yes.
Board Member Robinson.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck
Thank
with your
you.
project. Our final item for today is number 7 on the regular agenda, 2025 election of the Vice Chair of the Development Review Board. I would entertain nominations. I believe Commissioner Young and I are not participating, so I would entertain motions from the rest of the board for this year's Vice Chair.
I'd make a nomination for Board Member Brand to continue for another year.
I second that.
I accept that nomination.
I agree.
Right, we're still going to do a roll call vote, correct. And I think we lost Board Member Faki, but why don't we take a roll call?
Vice Chair Brand, I'm not sure if you can vote for yourself, but.
I think you can, actually.
I have to, okay.
Yes.
Okay. Board Member Peaser,
Yes.
Board Member Mason,
Yes.
Board Member Robinson.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 4-0.
Excellent,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Congratulations, Vice Chair Brand. Excellent choice. And I suppose with that, it's been an absolute pleasure serving as the chair of this board the last 2 months, and I would call for an adjournment. Thank you.
So moved.